This episode's a little different than some other ones. We get into the holiday farm fire, which around here was a pretty big deal. It might not sound as familiar if you don't live in the Pacific Northwest, but I think it applies to the west coast of Canada and America with all the fires we're having. And, we're the world's suffering from a lot with the hurricanes and flooding all around the world and a lot of things going on. And this is just how it's kind of affected us in this corner. So we wanted to do an episode about it. We talked to Jesse, who's a local arborist who's got a property that was right in the middle of the fire. So, hopefully you guys enjoy the episode. Just want to say a big thanks to everybody who's supporting. It's cool to see this thing growing. We got more people reaching out on social media, and that is really good because we want to do the best podcast we can, and that happens by hearing from people and hearing what people like and hearing what people don't like. So thanks for the shout outs. We always love a 5-star review, so if you want to throw out a 5-star review, that's awesome. And with that, we'll take care of some business and then get right to it.
This podcast is for informational purposes only. It is not, nor is it intended to be, a substitute for professional arboriculture advice and should never be relied upon to perform or direct arboricultural work. The Tree Thinking Podcast makes no representations as to the accuracy, completeness, or suitability of any information on this podcast and will not be liable for any damages arising from the use of any information in the practice of arboriculture or tree work. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the guests, and their appearance on the podcast does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. The podcast and its hosts are not to be held responsible for misuse, cited, and or uncited copies of the content within this podcast by others. The Tree Thinking Podcast may not be reproduced or distributed without the express written consent of the Tree Thinking Podcast.
On the evening of September 7th of 2020, fire raged throughout the West Coast. In our corner of the Pacific Northwest, the holiday farm fire was just starting. It was a deadly mix of devastating fire being pushed by winds reaching 70 miles an hour. As night fell, the smoke had started to roll down the hill. We woke up the next morning to ash falling from the sky like snow, and there was a thick fog of smoke. It ended up burning just over 173,000 acres. On this episode of the Tree Thinking Podcast, we talk with Jesse Wilson and take a look at one of the biggest natural disasters our area has been through, to see what we can learn on the holiday farm fire 1 year's retrospective. All right, we're back for another episode of the Tree Thinking Podcast. This episode should be a little bit of a different one. This week we're going to do a topical episode, and around, for a lot of people out there, I know we get listeners from all around the world. And we're going to be talking about the holiday farm fire, which is a fire that rolled through here a year ago today. And so that fire changed a lot of people's lives. It erased towns off of the map. A lot of people lost their homes. A couple people lost their lives. It also hits on a lot of issues. But before we get too far into it, I'm Andrew.
I'm Corey. And I'm Jesse.
We got Jesse in here tonight. He's me and Jesse have been buddies for a long time. We worked together for years, and he lives in Ground Zero. His house and his life was very much affected by the holiday farm fire, so I wanted to have him on to kind of share his experience and get into that a little bit. Like I was saying, the holiday farm fire really... there's a lot of components to it. You have the storm work component, because what fueled that fire was these huge 70-mile-an-hour winds that came through and hit our city. So we'll talk a little bit about the storm work. But it's also, we're getting these big fires. Like the whole West Coast is on fire pretty much this time of year, all year. Like, the air index was unhealthy again today, because we got fires going on again. And meanwhile, Ida is ripping through Louisiana and now is up in New York creating crazy weather patterns that are these 100-year storms again. And when both those storms just hit a few years ago. So that's something that we'll probably touch on as well.
It seems like these 100-year storms are coming in at 2 or 3 year intervals.
Yeah.
Probably won't be able to call them 100-year storms for very much longer.
Exactly. So, I think that's something that's worth looking at and really is important to look at. But I know Corey did a lot of research on this. Corey, you want to catch us up and tell us what kind of get us started?
Yeah. So, we were largely impacted by the Holiday Farm fire. I know there were some pretty large other fires going on. Beachy Creek comes to mind, and that one was obviously pretty significant as well. But our impact was really this episode is really just going to focus on the Holiday Farm fire and how it impacted all of us. Working in and around Eugene and, Blue River and all of those areas.
Yep, that's where we'll go in depth. But I think, again, this, when the Holiday Farm fire was going on, there was a fire north of us and a fire south of us that were both erasing towns off of maps also. So this,
absolutely,
our experience will be around the Holiday Farm, but man,
this is just kind of like a snapshot of what was really going on in the Pacific Northwest
totally
during this time frame. Granted, it's just one fire, but I think there's going to be a lot of crossover between a lot of these stories. So, what was it? It was, it burned 173,000 acres, 430 homes. It spread to 37,000 acres in 24 hours and 105,000 acres in 48 hours, which is just
crazy.
If you know anything about fires, if you know anything about the type of fire it was in, thick forested Pacific Northwest Cascades, that's insane. Like if you hear about those numbers in Central Oregon, right? It's just grassland. It burns through grass so fast, but through timber, it's nuts. Like that is just mind-boggling how bad that is. And then 9 deaths, that's just from the Holiday Farm fire. Like those are some pretty sobering numbers. It was officially unknown how it started, but they suspected that it was a power line, got knocked over, and then that started the blaze. They traced it back to an internet outage that got knocked out, so they think that it knocked the internet line down as well as the power line, and then I think there was a crew that pretty much immediately responded to that fire, so they were there pretty much instantly, which, usually if you respond to one of those really quickly, you can kind of get it under control and you can start working on it. But with those, as Andrew mentioned, those 70-mile-an-hour winds, there's really nothing you can do. Like the fire just has a mind of its own. It'll have plenty of fuel. It has plenty of oxygen, and it'll do whatever it wants to do, no matter what humanity or humans or anything really wants to try to stop it. Like it's not going to happen.
Yeah, these weather events are good reminders that we are just little insects on this planet. We like to think we can control things, but when bigger forces want to have their way with us, that's exactly what they do. Well, and yeah, can you imagine being those crews? Because like you say, usually you get to that fire as a crew, and you can at least contain it, or But I heard stories where, they got there, thought they were getting there quick, but then these 70-mile-an-hour winds hit and are just throwing embers. And it quickly goes from like, oh, quick, we got here quick, to we need to get out of here because this is getting out of control.
Yep. It just jumped our line, and it just jumped our line again, and it just jumped the line that we thought was going to be the fallback line, and now we don't have a safe zone anymore. Like, yeah, it's terrifying.
Yeah. So, Jesse, were you at home when it was going on?
Yeah, I was at home. I had, I live on a property in Vida, across the Good Pasture Covered Bridge, and yeah, it was kind of wrapping up Labor Day weekend, and I'm pretty sure it was taco night, and we found ourselves hanging out, watching the stars. We had watched all this smoke really start to pour in from up valley, and it was the wind that, of course, was like the real event.
Yeah.
And so that was the catalyst that took the fire and made it a real thing. Mm-hmm. And like you spoke to it, gosh, it moved so fast that I think the fire started around maybe 8:30, 9 o'clock.
8:30 on the 7th of September.
Yeah.
Monday.
And then we had somebody who lived on the land with us came and woke me up. Gosh, it must have been probably 12:30 o'clock, something in the middle of the night, basically. Although maybe we might have been up drinking tequila, only a couple hours before. And he just said, yeah, level 3 evac, don't grab anything, just get out of here. And so we, there was a couple people staying with us. It was kind of end of summer, kind of harvest season on our family farm. So we had a host of different people there, and of course lots of animals. And I think like probably 99% of people were thoroughly unprepared for this.
Yeah.
I didn't even have the wherewithal to start to pack a vehicle or anything like that. I just kind of needed to sit down and just kind of, even though it was kind of a blizzard of ashes at the time, it very much was apocalyptic because we were feeling that smoke pressure from upstream.
Mm-hmm.
And structures had already fully, incinerated. So like we were, breathing burnt fiberglass insulation that was floating in the sky. I mean, who knows?
It was so brutal, the smoke from that fire.
Yeah. I mean, beyond, it's probably like just consistently smoking a cigarette for how many hours
Yep.
without ever putting it down. It's probably on par with that.
Yeah.
And maybe just as many chemicals, it was brutal.
Well, maybe a few less.
Well,
Just a couple.
considering we might have been smoking a few cigarettes also, just but yeah, it was pretty sobering to realize that, okay, we need to actually get a head count. We need to figure out what we're gonna do with the animals. And yeah, what do we do? Do we just immediately leave? Like the sirens are wailing down the road, you can hear them, right?
And that's hardcore, the thought of like, leave everything, just get out.
Yeah.
When you're talking about your family heirlooms, because that place has been in your family for a while, right?
Yeah, since 1981.
So I'd imagine there's family heirlooms there. That's just that thought alone, much less before you get to animals and things that are even more important, just get out now.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, I, of course, had that first thought, like, okay, well, if I were to really leave, go grab the espresso machine, I think. I mean, I didn't really realize, like, the severity of all these things, right? I kind of let go of the things really quickly, and I kind of kicked into, okay, well, what can we do? I'm a really pretty resolution-based person, and I think that's helped me a lot in the tree care industry when you run into all these strange problems.
Yeah.
And you recognize that the stakes are life and death, right? When we were talking about wildfire, we'd seen the smoke. We knew that there was these devastating fires happening in watersheds just to the north and all throughout the Medford, Ashland areas. And we knew that the gravity of this was real. But until you are a climate refugee and it really does burn up your backyard, you don't really understand the impacts of something that, I'm going to refer to as global climate change, but I'm assuming we're going to talk about that a little bit more. But I mean, there were some implications of what was going on that I personally had forecast. I was like, this is going to be a really bad fire season.
Yeah.
Given the last couple of years where we've seen this incremental buildup that doesn't seem to have an end. It's kind of the manifestation of how many decades of poor forestry management, monoculture, farming on our forest lands, development of silviculture practices that are completely far from sustainable, despite all the billboards that tell you how sustainable Seneca is. Whatever else.
I believe every word that those billboards tell me.
Well, you also believe that, we should probably start planting, Sierra Nevada, high mountain, arid climate trees because the climate is moving,
Yeah. It was like, for me, the first, those first moments of realizing something big is going to happen. Well, to be honest, I didn't realize something big was going to happen. I heard that there was a big fire starting, right? Mm-hmm. And I had actually gone on a call out with the city, just a random branch had broken in a tree and fallen, was hanging over the street. So I went out. It was the end of Labor Day weekend. So I was like, oh, damn it. The weekend ended a little earlier. I got to go out, honey. So I go and, get this branch down and come back. And as I come back in, all of a sudden I smell smoke. And it went from like this beautiful blue skies, weekend afternoon as I'm getting home to my wife's running around, shutting the windows like, oh my God, the smoke's coming in. And you can just see this cloud descending on the city. And that's a little different because usually, we've been, like you said, we've been dealing with this for a few years, as it's ramped up every year. But it's like a haze that over a day kind of starts to build up, or over a few days. And this went from like clear skies, beautiful day, to just like a cloud coming in. And then that was the other weird thing that you mentioned, the ash in the air. That's like, okay, this is next level. This isn't just a haze. There's like chunks of burning trees floating around me right now.
Yeah, my mom was alive for when Mount St. Helens blew, and she talks about the ash raining down and just the apocalyptic feel of that. And I mean, this felt like she described it, just otherworldly, like completely not of this earth kind of thing.
And so that was as it was getting dark. Although, with the timeline, I wonder, because there was other fires around, I wonder if that smoke was coming from another fire and just being blown in by the heavy wind.
That was my experience. It was probably around 5 p.m.
Yeah, I'll bet that's what was going on.
Yeah, it looked like somebody was pouring a beaker of liquid, or gasified, chemistry lab smoke, and was coming and just getting poured into the valley from above.
Yeah, because
that was really ominous. I was like, what is going on? And okay, we associate it with the fire elsewhere. And so that was the strange timing aspect.
Yeah.
That here's the smoke shows up at 5 o'clock. The fire didn't actually start till closer to 9. So we were for many hours there.
Feeling the effect.
The pressure from somewhere else.
Yeah.
But it still was so ominous that it spooked us. So it did put us all kind of on alert.
Well, and it was the conditions, because it was that wind was starting, like the storm was pushing in, and everybody knows that feeling of like, you can feel when a powerful storm's, there's almost an energy in the air.
Yeah, there's like an electricity.
And so that wind that ended up fueling the fire was also pushing that smoke in. Mm-hmm. So it was really the next day that I was seeing that ash in the air. This is a year later, so some of this, we're kind of remembering on the fly here, so you're going to have to bear with us a little bit.
A little fuzzy. Don't fact check us.
Yeah, no, do fact check us. Just understand you might need to.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was waking up and remembering going to bed with some smoke, and then waking up. That's when I started seeing ash. And that was, so a couple things that I had going on at the time is my forced air unit went out. So I didn't have, it was hot, and I didn't have AC, which, I'm just a spoiled brat. So, but so we had to close all the windows up, and we couldn't open anything up because it was so thick. And so it was just super hot, and I had to close all the windows in the house nonstop to keep the smoke out. And then the other thing was my truck, the FJ was in the shop. So I was driving my tree truck, my old 77 Ford, where the windows are cracked. And I got in to go to work in the old Ford. And I looked down into the passenger seat foot area, and there was wind kind of blowing as the truck turned on and the fan started going. And there was ash like spinning in that foot area. And I remember thinking like, oh, that's not good.
Quite bad, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was in the middle of what was going to be one of our big vacations for that year.
That's right.
Yeah, we had saved up a bunch of vacation for Labor Day weekend. I live in Brownsville, so it was on the northern end of the Holiday Farm Fire, like impact-wise, but it was still well within the Holiday Farm Fire. It wasn't quite Beachy Creek. So we were in... The plan was to go to do tree work in 3 different states over like a week period, right? I was going to go visit some friends over in Idaho. They live on Cascade, right next to the lake, gorgeous area. And then we're going to go up to Bellingham, Washington, I think. Yeah. Or I think It's near Bellingham. Anyway, we were going to go up there, and then we were going to do some tree work up there too. So we're going to do this whole thing. It was going to be, the last big vacation of the summer, and we had been saving up, all year for this, and it was going to be great, right?
Real quick, this is how much of tree nerds we are. You're like, it was going to be the last big vacation. I was so looking forward to doing tree work in 3 different states.
Over a week. Like, that sounded great. Western states, too. It's not like the East Coast states where you can, drive 30 minutes and then you're in another state kind of thing. This is like miles and miles. Anyway, I digress. So we were in Idaho, right? And we start hearing these reports. I remember sitting in the living room with my friends, and we start hearing these reports, and we start looking at some of these fire maps, and we're like, oh, this is bad. This is really, really bad. Like, we have to go home. Like, we have to go home, like, ASAP, right? And so we do. We start packing everything up. We start getting ready. So we start heading back, right? We went over, we didn't cut up north. We went over Highway 58. Yeah, we took 58 over and then cut up that direction, right? So when we're coming back, we start seeing all these highways are closing, right? We'd seen it the night before, but now they're starting to close even more, right? So we had seen that Highway 20 had closed down completely, so we couldn't come back that way. We had seen that Highway 126 had closed down completely, so we couldn't go that way, right? So we were aiming for either Highway 22 or Highway 58, right? And we got there, I think, right before 58. I think they shut down Highway 58 probably the same day that we drove through it. And like just driving through and seeing the smoke plume, it was up off to the north at this point from 58, just seeing the smoke plume just pouring into the sky, and then driving into Eugene and like, so clear skies, over in Idaho, Central Oregon, nothing, right? You're driving through, everything looks fine. We're like, okay, well, maybe it's not as bad. I mean, we're not there. We're getting close. We're at the foothills of the Cascades, so it can't be that bad, right? And then you start getting, I remember it was right near like Dexter Lake, where we saw the smoke plume, a little bit before Dexter Lake, and then you get to Dexter Lake, and it's just like, you see smoke, and then you see more smoke. And before you know it, you can't see the car in front of you that's maybe 2 car lengths in front of you because it's so thick. And like just driving back into this, it was just insane. And we get back to our house. We had my sister-in-law had her family, they lived up in Mill City, and they were heavily impacted by it. And we offered them our place to stay, but we didn't have power. So we came back to no power, just this apocalyptic, smoky feeling. We try to like make heads or tails out of this. Like, what is going on? What is this? What?
Yeah, and that's a couple days into the fire at that point.
Yes. So this is, we drove back. So Monday it hit, right? We drove back all day. This would have been Tuesday night that we came back, and everything was just like gone to shit. Like, we were driving back on the freeway because we cut over 58 and then cut up the freeway, right? There was a bunch of traffic. People were panicky, as they should have been. There were like RVs and stuff like pulled off. Like, people just crashed their RVs because they were so panicked. And you just see them abandoned like on the side of the road. It was insane. Like, just driving back into that, insanity.
Yeah. So, yeah, that was crazy because I remember when it first hit, Jamie was working at the city still, and both you and Jamie were out of state on vacation. Yeah. And so it was me and Becca, Sean and Jeff, and that was, and there's a whole big storm, but we'll get into that later. I'm kind of curious because kind of what you're talking about, or what I'm thinking about when you were telling that story, is how so many people were displaced, and I'm sure, like, what did you guys do? Where did you go once you get the evacuation notice? Hey, you got to get out of here. Take what you can hold and get the hell out. Where did you go?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, we decided to not go anywhere for a little while.
Okay.
I decided that we should get a head count. There was about 10 people living at that property, so made sure everybody was accounted for. All the animals were accounted for. Everybody left, and we had a friend who had a little apartment space that was just, fortunately available at the time, and there was no occupants. So we were able to have our little 2-bedroom crash site. It was a lot better than a hotel. Very fortunate about that. But it still was, 6 people and 5 animals and everything all smashed into one spot. Ugh. And no furnishings. They were just, crashed on the floor or whatever. And of course, it's also kind of during COVID. So you're like, things are just still kind of iffy. And, can you go out? Can you socialize? Can you be confined in indoor spaces with other people for extended periods of time?
Well, and now we're a little bit more comfortable with COVID, and like, not trying to go down that whole rabbit hole of, what's the okay lines with COVID, but I think people have settled into their own personal comfort levels more with, their bubble and their exposure levels and stuff. But that was during COVID when it was still kind of a crazy, like, what is this thing we're dealing with?
Yeah, correct. And it was highly advised to not go outside either.
Yeah.
Because of the air pollution quality. So, we were very fortunate in that sense. But so before we actually left, though, we did stick around until about 8:30 in the morning. I had some innate desire to see the sunrise. I was really curious, what's this going to look like in the daytime?
Yeah.
What is this beast from Mordor that's like coming down the valley? And, there's definitely some precautionary measures that we took. So we had no power. So we figured out the generator situation that sent power to our well pump. And so we were able to start setting up sprinklers. I was like, well, we know it's coming from the east. So let's set up all our sprinklers on all the eastern sides of of our buildings, which just happened. All of our buildings have large covered decks facing east with who knows, basically 40 years of accumulated tinder. And so we did that. I mean, we legitimately just set up the tripod sprinklers on the deck, blasting the house into the landscape, 360, just send it. And every hour or so we'd move it about, 20, 30 feet and just kind of cover the span of all the proximity we could. And we moved vehicles. We made sure we put the tractor in a zone that we thought, oh, this is kind of an open, safe spot. Man, we're not we took it out of a structure because we didn't want it to potentially burn down. I was if in the chance that we do come back and survive through this, we're gonna need a tractor.
Yep.
So we did little things like that. There's definitely some smoke fatigue that happened too. So we took some breaks, went into the old basement.
Yeah.
Had the doors closed in the basement, so we had a little safe spot where we were really sure there wasn't a lot of smoke. And we go in there and take little 20-minute breaks and just kind of brainstorm. So it was myself and 2 other friends that were willing to risk their lives. And we did that till, I want to say, close to 8 o'clock in the morning. Sun came up. Couldn't tell. It was still glowing orange and yet dark and ominous. And like you were saying, pretty much insane. Some apocalyptic novel taking place. And all of a sudden I'm like starring in the novel. And I was like, okay, this is my family property. Like we can stay and defend it. The place, ironically enough, had fire hoses, has 2-inch main lines with all these heads in different parts of the property. It's about 20 acres.
Oh man.
So I was kind of in this situation where I could legitimately stay with the ship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But at what cost? And I'm going to put my friends' lives at risk. And anyways, what really was the game changer for me was a phone conversation I had with Rob, your brother.
Yeah.
Because we had gotten clued in that Blue River was gone, right?
Yeah, that was a hardcore one for me because we have the family property in we have the property now, but just hearing it's burning, and then some other family friends were living in it, so it's like, man, did Vito and his family make it out? No, but the information was just little bits and pieces, and it would be like hearsay. It kind of reminded me a little bit of how you get information back in the day, because now you get information and it's all over your, the news or your phone. And so you're getting, but then the information, you're trying to get information so fast, and there's so many rumors going around and so much stuff that, like, you couldn't fully trust it. You were getting like this hearsay information, and it was like hard to really pin down what was going on.
Yeah, I mean, it was a bona fide rumor mill.
Yeah.
But I will say, talking to Rob summed it up for me. He's like, you don't understand the magnitude of the wind.
Yeah.
And I remember standing on my deck facing east, trying to watch the sun come up and thinking, you know what? This is great and all, but there's at the end of the day, there's not much I could do. And I'm not afraid of the fire, but the smoke is going to kill me. Like, that would be the stupidest way to die, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, how do you ride a fire out? Like, even if you have a little bubble where you're going to be, where, like, you're not in something burnable, like the smoke, the heat, how do you I actually heard a story. It wasn't the Holiday Farm. It was one of the ones up north of us in the North Fork of the Santiam. Some guy decided to stay on his property, and he rode it out by going into the middle of the North Fork of the Santiam, and he just had a plastic chair. And he just, like, got behind a rock, and there's, like, big dead chunks of tree coming down the river, burnt, and, like, tinders, and he just fucking rode it out in the middle of this river with a plastic chair that, like, got all melted. I mean, just the stories that came out were so crazy.
yeah, well, we definitely have our fair share of stories. I mean, one of the best parts for me was, we did lose a few structures, and we lost a greenhouse. I had this really sweet greenhouse that we built out of redwood and glass and all these swinging doors so you can open it. It was shaped like in a hexagon. And typically I have a bunch of citrus trees in there because it's all framed up. I insulated it and had heat, and it was like got my little lemon and lime collection, right? And it was peak summer and really hot, so I'd taken all the citrus trees out of the greenhouse. The greenhouse ended up burning down, but in must have been like the most glorious fashion, because we got a little bit of it on game cam, because we had I had my flock of ducks, right? I'm into like regenerative land management. So I got the ducks out there next to the garden doing their slug patrol, but it had a predator problem. So I got a game cam. Set the game cam up to view the ducks. And then in the background is the greenhouse. And we ended up salvaging the SD card out of the thing, because it had all this like melted plastic in the game cam. Like, Warrior made it through.
Yeah.
But nice.
Preserved the info, the black box. And we plugged it in, and we're watching this footage of the ducks literally sitting there, right? The phrase sitting duck is like such a thing. And the ducks are sitting there, and it's raining fire from the sky. And you can just watch the little temperature gauge in the corner just rise. It's like 99 degrees. It's like, whatever, 10 o'clock in the morning. It was about the time that the fire pushed through.
Huh.
And I can see like their little nesting boxes catching on fire. The ducks are literally just sitting there. Like, what else are they going to do?
Yeah.
Feeding them like all this grain. They're not going anywhere.
You can fly away from a forest fire.
Yeah, right. And in the background, you see this like small explosion. And what happened was a tree that was along the river had caught on fire, and it burnt out, and about maybe 30, 35 feet up was where the burnout occurred. Mind you, this is probably a 36-inch diameter Doug fir, right? Right on the Mackenzie.
Just a small tree, right?
Yeah, just a twig.
Yeah.
And it came down, and it landed on the greenhouse on fire.
Oh, man.
And we got on footage. And the ducks are in the foreground. And all the ducks survived.
Really?
That's awesome.
Yeah, moral of the story, all the ducks survived.
So being a sitting duck might be a survival mechanism, actually.
Apparently.
Hey, they've evolved this far, so, I mean, does something for them.
So, yeah, so there was definitely some stories and stories that, I definitely think back and like, wow, what if I was there to, try to fight the fire, right?
Yeah.
Be a firefighter.
Yeah.
Here I am with my little tripod sprinklers. But I'll tell you what, another micro story here, and then we can shift gears, whatever.
Oh, go as long as you want.
I took another sprinkler, and we have a generator, right? We back up propane generator. And my grandparents, who initially like put this property together, had the wisdom to put in a large propane tank. So there's like 1,500 gallons of propane sitting there, right? And I was like, well, I should probably put a sprinkler on the propane tank. Just see what happens. And here it's going, right? My little like, and you know, post fire, we go back and you look at the propane tank. This is perfect 360-degree charred ring around the propane tank. Perfect 360-degree circle.
Oh my God! It
Wow.
worked. It
Yeah.
worked.
And so that of course, you know, kept the irrigation running, right? Long enough because it kept the fuel source to the you know, sending power to the generator to the pump, and like like we still had water. So like little things like that, like not only would it have completely leveled the house and destroyed the rest of the surrounding forest and, you know, who knows what else, but it simply allowed the rest of the property to keep working. So little things like that.
Yeah.
Right? That was me fighting the fire.
Yep.
Totally.
So to speak. And we're doing it at 4:00 in the morning, like still, you know,
Yep.
little tequila drunk, smoking cigarettes, running around on the tractor with headlights. Like, wow, it's actually like a blizzard.
Yeah.
Like, we actually can't really
Wow.
like see 15 feet in front of us.
That's got to be such a crazy like mind state feel, you know, and I'm trying to relate this to tree work because this is a tree podcast and maybe I'm way off, but you kind of clued into it earlier where you said, you know, it's part of being a tree, you know, tree worker is you find yourself in these crazy situations and you have to be like task oriented. Okay, I'm doing this. Now I'm doing this. And maybe not thinking of like the big, you know, you're not thinking about the whole removal. You're thinking about the stick you got to cut in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a big tree comes down one stick at a time.
Yep.
Do you think that kind of mentality kind of helped keep your head in the game for that? Because it seems like you were, you know, when everyone's like, you just got to run, you're like, well, I actually got to do a couple other things first. So
Yes.
I'll be right there.
That was precisely it. I mean, it called into question a certain degree of leadership, which I think by working on crews and working really highly collaboratively, again, when the stakes are high, you know, that ability came in handy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because, you know, it allowed me to kind of string together a series of thoughts, assess the situation, look at all the little details, but don't get caught up on all the little details either. I got to understand the big picture, which is, you know, life is more important than these things, these buildings, you know.
Yeah.
So it was very useful to have been so associated with the trees. I'm also really considerate because, like you said, it was a windstorm. So I was like, we're not going in the woods. Don't go in the woods. We had numerous trees that came down that weren't even affected by the fire, but they were affected by the wind. It was a wind throw.
Yeah. Wow.
Big trees too.
Mm-hmm.
So,
because that was a powerful wind that came ripping down the hill.
oh yeah. And the topography of where we are is also unique because it really is a forge zone. I mean, it pipes right there. There's a steep incline on either side of the valley, and it's kind of open, way more open upstream, and then it gets really condensed, and then it kind of, bottlenecks, hourglasses back open again onto Lieberg Dam. So we were in this spot where it got hot, and it was also really fast. I mean, you could tell that the wind was the factor because of the rate at which it burned through the forest. And, you know, from my experience was something that I look back after a year of having kind of moved back out there, and then I'm just thinking, wow, this fire though it's so natural, but it's so unnatural. Mm-hmm. That was the real paradox for me. It was like, this is normal, this is to be expected, but this is also a byproduct of not only poor land management, but I mean, all the structures. And you know, at the end of the day, I was really worried about the river. This is something I talked with Nathaniel about, actually, is that the river was the bearer of all this. It was the thing that flushed it out.
Yeah.
After all that unnatural fire, all the structures, all the vehicles, all the fertilizers.
All that cigarette, to use our analogy, all that cigarette chemicals just washing straight into that funnel.
Yeah, and I think that was symbolic of you know, many things that are going on in the world today. And so that maybe is a good segue to open up, like, what are what's the aftermath 5, 10, 15 years from now? You know, how does that impact salmon runs?
Yeah.
Right? How do we talk about now the thereafter, the restoration versus the degradation? Like, where's the line there? I mean, I've been doing some work with the utility company, doing hazardous tree risk assessments. working with private property owners, working with a host of different nonprofit agencies. And it really has been nice to be boots on the ground, living it, feeling it, also knowing that we're somehow very much just cashed in all our karma points, right? That we got pretty lucky too. So, we're out there, we're farming, and we're figuring it out. And it's like the resiliency factor is really called into question here too. So, I mean, I can speak more about that in my own personal story, but again, that kind of comes back to what you were talking about, which is as somebody who works with trees, you learn about resiliency.
Yeah.
On a scale that is different than typical human understanding of resiliency.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. You say you cashed out all your karma points, and I've thought a lot about karma, and I've come to a point with karma where there's not good karma or bad karma. There's just karma.
Yeah.
Right. And so this whole thing is kind of the karma that we're dealing with. If you're looking at the big picture, the poor land management, the drought that we're in because of, decisions that we've made as a species in a lot of ways, and whether that decision is what got us here or the decision is not doing something more about where we're at in the moment, no matter how we got here. It's karma always comes through. It's not good or bad. It's just what we get because of it, because it's what we get,
Yeah, they say karma never loses an address.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, that is, man, what a crazy experience. I think that's, some things in life you don't really know how you're going to react. You don't know until you're in that moment, and that's got to be one of those experiences. Let's see. So kind of the immediate impact, and going along with what you were saying, the river, that was one of the things that stood out to me, because we get all our water from the river. So right away, our sinks tasted like ash. Yeah. No matter, the city was doing its best to filter that water, but you can only filter so much when you've got a whole forest of ash in the river. The impact on the river, everything downstream, that's got to be crazy.
Yeah, I mean, apparently they used to call the Mackenzie River Valley, whoever they is, the asbestos forest. Think with this notion that it can never burn. It can't be impacted by fire. It's too wet. It's too dense, it's too established, and there's too much human life there. It could never happen.
It sounds like what did they say about the Titanic? About it not sinking?
Yeah.
Is that off base there?
Well, I think maybe from a human cockiness perspective, but the thing about it is when I first started doing tree work, it would rain in the winter time. It would rain for, 30, 60 days straight. You'd just get nonstop rain in the winter. And, maybe you get a couple day break and then it'd rain again all winter. And then in the summer, every couple weeks you get a rain. Now, I mean, it hasn't rained in a long, well, we've got little sprinkles, but when you're talking about an actual rain, did it rain maybe twice last winter where it was like downpour, like real rain, not just like a shower or not just a little bit, but where it rained all day long. Yeah. We just don't have that.
We don't. And, thinking about it from a fire ecology standpoint, you have a river there, right? And people will always say, like, going back to your story about the guy in the middle of Santiam, he went to the center of a lake, right? Because that's what he thought his safest spot was. It's right next to water, it'll keep the stuff greener and drier or less dry, and, it'll be a good protection zone. In fires, it's actually, water doesn't do a whole lot other than increase the volume of burnable material immediately next to it. So you have this buildup of burnable material right there concentrated. You get enough heat, it'll combust. Anything will burn if you get it hot enough. And if you have a fire like that, just perfect storm, it's a tinderbox. And the whole thing just goes.
That being said, though, and that totally makes sense, But that being said, if you're getting rain every couple weeks through the summer,
Yeah.
that like those sparks that the fire's throwing,
Right. So
even if you have crazy wind, maybe.
no. So going back to your point, you have that. So you have that water running down the river, right? And the stuff immediately next to the river is drawing some moisture from it, but it doesn't have the atmospheric moisture, I guess.
Yeah.
So it's the moisture in the river that is drawing up, but the atmospheric moisture is not there, which it has been historically used to. So it is just a tinderbox because it's not getting that rain that its entire existence it's been used to. So it is just a tinderbox because no rain, huge fuel loads, and then you get the crazy wind forces like that and the crazy fires like that. And
yeah, you got those big like 30, 50-year moss mats, which if they're getting water and getting soaked every couple weeks,
it's like trying to burn a sponge.
It's trying to burn a sponge. But if it hasn't gotten water for a bunch of months, then it is just fire starter at that point. So
Yeah, add in some fire suppression.
yeah.
And,
Some.
get away from low intensity burn, and you're going to end up with high intensity burn. It is a strange cycle. A lot of things in the fire ecology they're intuitive, but a little bit counterintuitive to somebody who's not used to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I think if this is an opinion thing here, but if you're part of the indigenous culture that was steeped in land management through fire, it's the only way.
Right.
Yeah,
it's the only way. It was. That's how you do it. And nowadays we can't hardly imagine what that would be like. And that's what I was speaking to about the unnatural aspects of the fire and the fact that, trees that were lost, old growth trees along the river, they would have survived the fire had it not been for the 1,800 square foot log home right immediately adjacent to them.
Yeah.
So you have these structure fires that had cataclysmic impact on some of our most mature stands of trees along the immediate riparian areas. And not to mention that is where the wind was kind of piping the most hot. So it lifted those structure fires way in the canopy.
Yeah.
So now we have canopy fires that might otherwise not have occurred. So again, that's a byproduct of low impact, low intensity fire regimens versus these high intensity burns are the way that it travels through the canopy. And we watched it right before we left. We watched canopy fires taking place across the river.
Damn.
Maybe a mile and a half from our place. And it was that ember throw.
Yeah.
That was a sight to be seen. I mean, it put to shame fireworks shows. This was in all directions, swirling up, moving down, sideways into each other. It was when you hear about how fire systems create their own weather patterns and stuff like that, you could watch it and it had all these swirling embers in it that were on fire.
That illustrate the weather pattern.
So you could see where the wind dynamic was happening, which otherwise you couldn't see. So it had almost like a tornado type effect when you see the cow and the tornado.
Wow.
Tornado. You're like, oh, well, it's going that way.
Yeah, fire whirl is what we called them.
Yeah.
Fire whirls.
Well, for someone like myself, I mean, this was out of animation or something. But, it was also at that point that we decided we should probably leave.
Yeah.
Again, it makes you feel how truly insignificant you are in the grand scheme of things. Like
Yeah.
seeing a force of nature like that, just like, what are you going to do?
Well, and it's kind of crazy because if you think about it, you had the ability to get in a gas-powered vehicle and get the hell out of there.
Right.
Most people throughout history, if they saw that they, you're not outrunning that fire.
Yeah.
Like maybe you had a horse. If you had a horse, you were probably all right.
Maybe.
Maybe.
Yeah, horses spook pretty easy.
Horses spook pretty easy. And two, did you have the developed road to be able to travel that fast on a horse to get out of it? So like what you saw is I wonder how many people throughout, like at what point in history could people see that and still live?
Well, and we're in a unique situation because we live across the Good Pasture Covered Bridge, which is like built in 38, right?
Yeah, that
nice
nice wood timber bridge.
It's like Civic Stadium. I was like, this is like so dry.
Yeah.
Right? And there was a big rumor mill, of course, around that and whether or not the Good Pasture Bridge had burned down.
Yeah.
They put up a pretty good stand. Firefighters did there. So thankfully that survived. Otherwise, I wouldn't have actually even been able to go back to my place.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh my goodness.
And because that's the one way in, which is a unique thing. And I was thinking about it, of course. I was like, well, if the bridge goes, then we actually are stuck here. And we'll be stuck here for a really long time, too. Get up the raft, we'd figure it out. But I was very much inclined to try to figure out my animal situation. Like you brought up the horses, right? We decided with COVID we were going to be at home. Well, let's raise a whole bunch of meat chickens and turkeys and guinea fowl. And we have pheasants, peacock. Like, we had like all these birds. And last thing we did before we did evacuate was open the pens to all the animal, their little paddocks. And they had the hen house got cracked open. And we came back a couple of days later. We managed to get back up there and basically did an animal welfare check and I guess looked at our houses too. But all the animals survived.
Wow.
That's fantastic.
So
that's amazing.
Somehow they did it, right? I don't know. They just have a higher tolerance for smoke toxicity or something. Pre-smoked turkey is how we like it. We ended up, coming back, and this was actually part of the adversity. The real adversity was we had no power. Both of our pump houses burned. So we did eventually lose all water to the property. And we got a trash pump on Craigslist and we're pumping out of the river, right? Because we had no other things to do. We emptied the hot tub with 5-gallon buckets and like, it was real. I really like the chips, right? I love using wood chips, byproduct of our wonderful industry, chip mulch, pathways, all over the place. All around my house, all chips, right? Little pieces of dried out firewood, just all around the house.
Just more kindling here. We're gonna make a little kindling path around the house, and
so it's of course. I will say though, having watered pre-fire, it's like actually pretty moistened, so it worked really well as a defensible space, truthfully. But there was some smoldering going on, like under the chips, and
yeah, those smoldering chip fires could last a long time.
For real. That was where it was really cool to actually feel like I was fighting a fire and get out the Pulaskis and pull fire lines, right?
Nice.
Because digging fire lines and chips is actually pretty darn easy.
Yeah. It's not tree roots. It's just chips.
Yeah, like in silty loam soil too. It was great.
Yeah, they tell stories about fires up in Alaska. So Alaska has this really thick peat stuff, right?
Yeah, the peat moss or the bog.
The bog, yeah, kind of like the bog stuff. So fires will get down into there, and it'll sit dormant for a year, 2 years, and it'll start a new fire. So far removed from that fire that burned through there. It's just insane what it'll do when it gets just the perfect pocket of like the right mixture of oxygen to keep that spark going, and the right mixture of fuel to like just burn through slowly. But yeah, chip piles, they'll do the same thing.
Oh yeah, we lost a couple really good chip piles. We lost like 15 cores of seasoned hardwood. You guys, I just lost all my firewood. I bought firewood after the fire.
No.
On 25 acres of forested land and buying firewood. But that's okay. It was something that I won't ever have to do again, hopefully.
It's interesting talking about the chips. Jason at one of the tree guys that we work with at the city. I don't know if you know Jason. He owns Four Seasons. He
Jason
lives up
Stein,
the river.
right?
Jason Stein, yeah.
Yeah, this guy's like a legend. I don't know.
He's
this
a
guy.
total legend, man.
Yeah, I've never actually met him, but I've probably talked with about 100 people about Jason Stein and Four Seasons Tree Care. So I got to meet this guy one of these days. I was kind of hoping that the fire was going to be a catalyst for that, because I also started my own tree care company since the fire.
Oh,
nice.
nice. What's your company's name?
So we are Lion Flower Tree Works.
Lion Flower Tree Works.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, I had to. I'm evacuated, sitting in this little
nothing
two-bedroom
wrong with that.
and I'm like a tree guy. I like doing shit. I like moving. I'm like, smoke so bad. I really shouldn't be doing removals for my neighbors in town. Luckily, I had my truck full of tree gear. So when I did evac, I had all my trees.
Nice.
Oh man.
I lost a couple good saws. I did lose my saw shack,
Dang it.
but I had enough of my gear in my truck. And I was like, okay, well, I can't actually use it. It's like too smoky. So chill out for a couple days. Well, F it. I'm going to get my CCB. Like, we're just going to do this. Like,
Yeah.
I'm just going to get licensed so we can do all the internet stuff. And yeah, so, you know, our family farm is called Lion Flower Farm. And so it only made sense that we were going to be doing, you know, Lion Flower Tree Works.
Well, and there's such a big need for tree work up the river.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, well, I called you to see if you wanted to come on the podcast, and you're like, yep, just rented a chipper. I'll be chipping all day, but yeah, I'm down to make it happen.
Oh, dude, maybe I misspoke, or maybe we miscommunicated, but I got a BC 1800, bro.
Do you?
Whoa.
We chipping.
Nice.
We be chipping.
Whoa.
Craigslist, dude.
Nice.
I bought it from a little logging family up in Sweet Home at 16,000 cash. This thing rips.
Wow.
Dude,
18 inches.
That's a steal.
Well,
That
yeah,
is-
because and it's in great shape. It's on 06 with 3,000 hours.
That's what we use at the city. That's what we're chipping with all day. Is
Yeah.
Oh, with the winch.
yeah, with the winch, the
Well,
whole
'cause,
nine.
Dude, I was like, okay, I'm starting this tree care thing. I'm not going to be pruning fruit trees. I'm not working on like
No,
willows.
not
and
up the
stuff.
river
Like,
after that fire.
there's this like chunky, like 5-foot diameter cottonwoods. Or just, what do you do with it all? You know?
Yeah.
And everybody's so uptight about fuels nowadays.
Yeah.
Yep.
Psychology of post fire and
Dude,
post-fire
that's such a
memory.
big thing.
Oh my God, they're just you know, okay, it's one thing to remove hazardous trees, but leave the friggin' organic matter like right there.
Yeah.
Yep.
And but do it responsibly too. Don't just make chip piles. You can broadcast, spread, you know, spray the chips, and then, you know, we've been dealing with a lot of this because we've been doing extensive amount of tree work on the property. I mean, the fire did rip through to such a capacity that, I mean, we had probably a dozen 200-foot firs that are still standing that are totally dead, that haven't been dealt with yet. So
can you fell them?
well, some of them are in some tight spaces.
Okay.
And they probably need to be topped before being felled because they are going to have such an impact on surrounding trees that I want to keep. And then additionally, our property is uniquely situated in adjacent to some BLM. And the BLM land is the riverfront. So that's where these two big 200-footers totally charge, right? And there's 27 of them, 27 that have been identified by BLM. I've been doing a lot of work with the BLM Forestry Department and their fuels reduction team to try to figure out what to do with 27 large hazardous trees on an embankment 7 feet from the water and about 30 feet from our house. And so all of our riverfront trees, I mean, technically they're not ours.
Right.
In public land.
Yours, as in you are the one that benefits from them and takes
Yeah.
care of them and
Yeah.
sees them and
also
is
technically
impacted
yours
by them.
because you're a taxpayer. So
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's part of the public access. And our property's, again, uniquely situated. So it has an upstream peninsula that connects to the riverfront and a downstream peninsula that connects to the riverfront. And then the BLM swath is in between. So it's technically not really available unless you either boat in or you trespass.
Yeah. It's yours.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's great. It's friggin'
Yeah.
ideal because we don't pay tax on it, and it makes the space feel bigger. And but the trouble is they aren't actually mine because now I have to deal with these trees.
Yeah.
And BLM,
From a legal
and
perspective.
BLM can only get to them by crossing onto our space, and there's tight access. I mean, really limited access. And we have people that live in the house right there, and so we'd have to evacuate the tenants for the couple of days, or they're felling everything. It's just going to completely change the landscape. And I can't be responsible for the replanting or invasive species management.
Yeah, you got enough of that on your own property, I'd imagine.
Correct, yeah. But this is also our riverfront. It's some of our most fragile, delicate, and highly impacted areas. So it only makes sense that we work something out. So I've been talking with BLM to do a private landowner contract for the ability to maintain invasives and then do some fuels reduction stuff. Again, I was trying to get the feds to hire me, Lion Flower Tree Works, to do this like epic amount of huge, like I was going to do a bunch of habitat creation, really.
oh man,
Oh, that'd be so sweet.
I mean, like the whole thing are like snags and just big old monster nesting sites. And we did it with one. Like I said, we had the upstream peninsula that touches the river.
Yeah.
So technically one of these, like I said, the 28th tree is it's 3 feet in diameter and then right next to the power lines. And we we decided, okay, I'm responsible basically, so I'm gonna do something about it. And we topped it out, and within 24 hours, we had a pair of osprey sitting on top of the snag.
Oh man.
Oh,
That is
so much potential within that BLM land.
Yeah,
To create snags and wildlife.
I've been documenting it and highlighting it. And I worked with a cultural anthropologist, just came out to assess, to see if there's any sort of remnants on the site. And they want to do a formal removal of all the trees. And I told them, I don't think I'm really going to give you access.
Yeah.
Unless you walk with me with your arborist and we go through and we discuss every tree individually.
Yeah.
And so I started, at first they were like going to maybe hire me, and I was like trying to, play nice and like be like, yeah, I have a really sound approach. I've been working in the tree industry for over a decade, And, it was going to be this legendary opportunity. And of course they like squashed my bid and like all this stuff. And now I have to play hardball.
Yeah.
So I'm like, you're not going to just come in here and tree tip all these with your big old shovel excavator. Like, you're not going to let that happen.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. I'm still in the midst of it. Here we are a year after, and I'm like, there's a political side to it. I'm dealing with the federal government. I've been dealing with FEMA, ODOT, which is our state. They're managing the road, and they're cutting trees that I thought were on our property. Well, turns out there's a 40-foot easement any way of center of any county maintained road. So they're chipping and cutting trees on what I thought was my space.
right.
Hear that, BLM? Come on, work with him. He wants to create habitat. He wants to, make a lemonade out of lemons.
Yeah.
Come on, man.
I got the ODOT guys to at least leave me habitat snags.
Hey,
I
that's
flagged
cool.
certain
Oh, they were
maples that
probably
had
stoked.
cavities.
They're like, "Oh, sweet, we just got to top it off here."
Yeah. Oh, the climber loved it. He's like, dude, this is so much better than the rest of the work we've been doing.
Yeah. Oh, that's
And
great.
That is good.
And somehow, some way, the place has worked out. I mean, like we are getting a mill, so that's the other exciting news. We're going to be milling up all this salvage wood and turning some of these big old trees into new houses, new lumber to build with for a variety of different projects. And then, we have an opportunity to really look at having a lot more sunlight. So the family farm we're going to be able to grow more diverse crops, I guess.
So
and
I think that's a good message for this, though, is like, hey, we can't control what happens, but how are you going to find the positive within it? Like, obviously you didn't want the trees gone, but if they're going to be gone, how can you benefit? Well, we got more farmland now.
yeah, we have more sunlight, which can be a good and a not so good. Again, there's a water conversation tied into that.
Yeah.
But I have, we've been doing mushroom inoculation projects with the various chips. We've been doing a lot of riparian restoration stuff. Been working in partnership with Northwest Youth Corps. They've been out like multiple weeks at a time with various crews doing invasive species removal and applying chips around trees that were planted by Oregon Woods, who was a subcontractor that was brought in to do some replanting. So we've actually already replanted 2/3 of the space. And yeah, I mean, the list of silver lining things is long and growing longer, actually. Built a lot of communal partnerships. Right?
Yeah.
Got involved working with the local utility. I've done tree work for pretty much all my neighbors within a mile of my house. So my commute has been nothing. So I was like, I mean, come on, this has got the shortened commute. That's a great silver lining to like devastating wildfires.
Especially when you live up the river and your commute is usually, I mean, what's it take? 35 minutes for you to get into town?
Yeah.
So
well, and nowadays that's a byproduct that's not so good. Is the traffic is heinous.
Oh, and because
heinous.
So that's another aspect of it. That fire rips through. They've had to replace all the power lines, all the communication lines. So anytime you go up any of those roads, there's two spots where you could get stopped from 5 minutes to 2 hours. Yeah. And you don't know if you're going to be an extra 5 minutes or an extra 2 hours.
Google's not going to tell you.
Yep. A matter of fact, let's take a quick beer break. We'll be back in a minute. Okay, we're back. I think before we took a little beer break, we were kind of getting into some of the silver linings, if you know, of the recovery effort, you could say. And that's something that me and Corey worked on with the city. You want to get into that a little bit?
Yeah. So obviously, city has a close partnership with eWeb, right? And eWeb pulls the McKenzie River is eWeb's source of water, clean, fresh water. So they have a very, very heavy interest in maintaining that. And obviously, a giant fire, like you were talking about, all of that washing into the river was really, really bad. So eWeb formed a partnership with McKenzie Water Council, McKenzie Water Trust, and then a few other entities, and they kind of formed this group where they were working on. We were part of the initial stage. We went through and we really just identified hazard trees and areas where they were going to be doing mitigation work. They were either replanting, they were putting in some booms to like kind of redirect some of the water away from some of the runoff from like right next to buildings. So we really did that. So we went through and we worked closely with McKenzie Water Trust and really just did that for, I want to say 2 weeks, 3 weeks, where we maybe it was a month where we sent somebody up there 2 or 3 days a week.
Yeah, I can't remember how long it lasted. I think it was 2 weeks. Yeah, I think it was 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Yeah, if I remember right.
Yeah. So anyway, we'd send an arborist. They do just hazard trees. Like we weren't doing anything for, as far as property owners. Not really long-term thinking for the sites. Really just getting the immediate hazards identified so that crews could go in and start doing some work and start doing that mitigation before the rains really hit and the runoff became a huge problem.
Yeah, it was interesting work. They would basically just give you, at least when I did it, they just gave me some marking tape, and then I would just measure DBH, and anything that looked hazardous, I'd just mark it as, okay, this is hazardous. I think they gave me 6 months. They said, do you think, is this hazardous within the next 6 months? And you're like, all right, yep, this one looks pretty sketchy. Mark this one, and then they would just send crews in behind us.
Yep.
So we weren't even doing a lot of the work. We were just, because they had an expert in the hydrodynamics or whatever they call it, how the watershed, the runoff would work, and they had a couple experts in different parts of that riparian area.
Yeah, and they had gone through before. They were the advanced crews before us. They had looked and they had identified, this spot needs this kind of mitigation work, so we're going to need to do this. And depending on the impact of that mitigation work, our crew is going to be there for 5 minutes, or they're going to be there for a week, kind of thing. And then from there, they kind of came up with a priority list, and we came in after that fact to kind of say, okay, well, if you're going to do work here, you need to do this, and this over the next 6 month period to make sure that nobody dies.
Yeah, there was a lot of work that was going on up there directly after it, though. And we kind of got off easy. I actually tried to get Yaniv to come in tonight. He was busy doing just with some family stuff, so he couldn't make it. But I know he's working for eWeb, and they were doing tons of work up there, just putting in 12-hour days, going full storm mode for quite a while up there. And then there's some videos that I saw on YouTube of guys doing like helicopter removals and just all kinds of crazy work on, because it's like what you were describing, these 200-foot fir trees, that are just torched, and you got to take care of them, and you got to get it done as quick as anything that could hit the highway. They got to get rid of, or somebody's house, or, so there's just a phenomenal amount of work up the river. As you were saying, you got hired on just because you're like, hey, I'm an arborist, and they're like, you're hired, come with us.
That is exactly how it worked, actually. And it was wild because I was actually really impressed that they did such extensive amount of work with private property owners. It wasn't exclusively around utilities. It was like, okay, your place is obviously not what it used to be. It's either completely gone or it's so negatively impacted that we're going to send in crews, basically. But they needed the crews to be safe.
Mhm.
So if, our job was to go and look at, well, what is it that is going to impair people's ability just to access the site? And not even whether those trees were going to live or die, right? And it was really interesting because these are trees that would have otherwise been totally fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And trees that had been there for longer than white people have really been around here. So that to me was really interesting to see that, okay, these trees were 180 years old, some of them that came down at our place. And I don't know. I don't know. Right now they're sitting in a big pile waiting to be auctioned off this fall and winter to the highest bidder. So like, that's what the approach looks like to my house, is just huge stacks of logs, and they're just waiting to be sold.
Wow.
It's really interesting.
Yeah, that is. The whole idea of the kind of profiting off of something like this kind of trips me out. And I can understand, why would you just you can't just leave the logs there. There's all kinds of other hazards, there's more fire.
Yeah.
Was it Fall Creek where they left a lot of stuff in there and then they had another fire rip through?
Something like that. Yeah, I think that might have been Fall Creek.
Yeah, I mean that was. I think it's a highly contested issue post fire. It's like,
Yeah.
how much do you leave and how much do you
And
haul out of there?
I know nothing about it. So if you know about it and you're like, dude, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about, you're 100% right. But I can see how it would be a highly contested issue because there's so much benefit in having those logs on the ground for nurse logs and, helping get nutrients back into the soil.
Right.
Yeah, every
But
single one of them has
You're
a dollar figure on it.
yeah, and then there's that whole side of it.
And
Yeah.
and dollars speak very, very loudly.
Well, all up and down, at least where they're doing all this ODOT clearing around the roads, like
Yeah.
right now. I mean, they've been working on it for a long time. It was the fire stretched over, I don't know, something like 40 miles or something. So they started way up river on the Mackenzie and worked their way down, and we're kind of at the western edge of where the fire burned. And it's been interesting because now they're showing up and there's literally, they staple barcodes onto every one of these trees.
Mhm.
Not only do they put a dot signifying that this tree needs to be removed, but they put barcodes and they put not one, but they put three, and they're perforated like little tabs, pick up at the store, like, oh, I need a dog sitter or whatever. It's like they have barcodes, and then somebody walks up, scans the code, pulls the tag. One of them goes to the logging people, one of them goes on the books, and one of them goes, whoever knows where it goes, actually.
Yeah.
But so they're tagged multiple times, and then they get divvied up. And the loggers only get paid. The cutters, the contractors only get paid per tree. And so they are they're there to cut, right? Because that's their money. That's fulfilling their contract and getting to move on. And so, everybody's got these interesting motives. And it's just kind of interesting to say, okay, well, does this tree, in fact, need to go? Some of them have backlean away from the road.
Yeah.
But they still got a barcode on it.
Right. Where's that tree? Where's that
Interesting.
tree going to go?
Okay, so the tree's dead, but it's clearly
dead
poses no impact to the easement.
But somebody can say, technically, if it fell that way, it would hit the road, so I can sell this. I mean, we need to remove this tree.
Yeah, right.
Safety. Safety. Get the tree down.
Well, I'm glad that it's like everything, it just ends up in the courts at least. And somebody's finally saying, hey, we need to put up some sort of moratorium, or where's the environmental impact statement? And we're going to file some lawsuits. So I know there's some environmental groups that have been doing that recently. And I don't know, don't want to say it's too late because there is a lot more work to be done. But just getting a little bit more of a thorough perspective.
Yeah.
Everybody's got their own, but let's try to consolidate into.
And I guess one of the silver linings for that is that, these fires unfortunately are not going to stop happening.
Mm-hmm.
And if you start setting that precedent now, like it's awful that it's happening now, and it's awful that, some of those things are happening here, but maybe if they happen here and somebody raises enough of a fuss, it's not going to happen the next time a fire rips through. And, maybe we can salvage more, and maybe we can help that, that native area somewhere else a little bit more. And again, I don't think it's ever too late to, stand up and fight for what's right, even if it's already, maybe past the point where the ideal past the point, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and again, a silver lining thing that I saw just recently, because I did some tree work up in Mackenzie Bridge. The Finrock Reach, I believe they're calling it. It's owned by the Mackenzie River Trust. It's a somewhat recent acquisition. I'm not the hippest of hip with this kind of stuff, but I follow them on Instagram. But they've done this massive restoration work, and most of this big, large woody debris that they've put back into the river, and you see it when you're driving up the highway now. It's one of the redeeming features, I think, of that stretch, which is so graphically redefined.
Oh, yeah.
Is this really beautiful, meandering, braided diversion system that's been created, putting excavators in the river, of course, right? And like rummaging through. But then they're taking a lot of this burnt wood that was donated as post-cleanup wood, large woody debris, huge trees, and then set up this really cool restoration project. And it's in the name of salmon, but also, creating habitat for western pond turtle and so on. So there's cool stuff going on, but whether or not that is going to have the lasting impact that we want to see it have, okay, great. Let's create habitat for salmon, but what if the last several, flows, the last couple runs in which their populations have been dwindling, are not going to be able to sustain if even getting back to that habitat. So
Yeah.
we're facing these bigger questions right now.
Well, and also, how are we going to learn from it so that we don't one of the things I keep thinking about, because we've talked about similar stuff a couple times on the show, when we talked, we had an episode about kind of the connection between the wildlife and the urban forest, and, as forest fires comes up and mismanagement of forest comes up, and all these things come up, and how do we get to a place where the forest isn't mismanaged is one of the things that that's one of those billion-dollar questions.
Yeah.
When
you start with diversity.
Yeah.
It'd be a good place.
Yeah, no, totally. But, it's like so far out of whack.
Yeah.
And if you're an extremist like me, you just say take the people out of it completely.
Yeah.
Let nature do what nature's been doing for long before we started fucking around with it.
True that. I must say, you see our human impact when you go and you look at the fireweed, which is one of our lovely natives that is, of course, so directly tied with fire, but loves disturbance in general. And you see areas where the fire ripped through, but the fireweed was allowed to regenerate. And then you see areas where the fire ripped through and the forest was cleared due to its hazardous nature. And in return, they ran all the equipment through in the wintertime when the fireweed is getting established. So you have really minimal regeneration of the fireweed. One is the fireweed that is the protective plant for all the new seedlings that are hatching out, germinating, and trying not to get baked by the now full exposure.
Yeah.
And so I've been looking into this because I love fireweed. I think if I were going to get a tattoo, it would probably be like a fireweed blossom or something.
That's awesome.
I'm also a beekeeper, and it's the champagne of honey. It's fireweed honey.
Nice.
I'm really interested in you can see it, how you can literally look off the Highway 126 and you look out, you're like, wow, there's some fireweed, but our human disturbance interrupted the natural cycle, right? Should be a lot more fireweed.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you're not going to have the same regeneration rates.
Right.
So if we want it to happen naturally, we really do need to take humans out of the gosh darn equation. I like how you said that's extreme, because now I can be like, yeah, cool, I'm extreme too. Like I totally agree with that. Totally agree with that.
Less human impact. Let the forest go through its natural process. It's funny. As humans, we make this mistake over and over again, where we try to, and I legitimately think we're trying to help. I don't think people are trying to disturb it. Now greed gets in the way. These things start
Monoculture.
Yeah,
Look,
monoculture.
Look, I really want to help, but I can make a lot of money if I just do this. Like, I'm still helping, but I'm also making money.
Well, and that's what it is. Everybody's like, I want to help. It might not be as much help, but I'm going to make a lot of money and I'll do it this way. Well,
Well, this is some really good perspective on tree care, actually, in general. For me, you know, I talk with clients and I say, okay, well, what do you want to see happen with your trees?
Yeah.
And then I say, okay, well, there's what you want to have happen, but there's also what am I going to do when I'm hanging out there, limb walked out on your dead maple branch over your greenhouse, and we're trying to adequately deal with this, squirrel chew or whatever. Because now I got to think about what's in my best interest, right?
Yeah.
And then you got to think about, well, what actually is in the best interest of the ecological community?
Total of the
right?
tree and the, oh, dude, you just connected those dots like a motherfucker.
Yeah, dude, that's my jam. So that's what I've been doing when I do tree work. That's why I call it tree works, is because I'm actually doing work for the trees. Like kind of like you said, with we're into preservation of these trees, pruning for preservation, planting with long-term regeneration, and understanding, well, what species are going to be more apt to survive through our ever-changing climate. I'm looking at replanting with a lot more oak, believe it or not. We don't have any oak really where I am. It's a little too wet, just barely too wet. You go 10 miles towards Eugene.
For now.
Yeah,
It's too wet for now.
Yeah, exactly. And so now I'm planting a lot more oak. I'm really interested in madrone.
Ponderosas.
Ponderosa, yep,
Yeah.
Valley pine. And then I think I'm going to do some sequoia. I think I'm going to do it. And then I'm going to throw some figs in the mix because, kind of a decorative landscape thing. I got this microclimate right along the road where I said they have already cut down all these trees that were in the easement, and now it's like full sun and steep and kind of rocky. And I think get some figs established, and I think they'll love it. So I'm going to do a little figgery in among some of these things. Try to keep it native.
Yeah.
Very much keep it native, because I'm trying to help.
Right. You're trying to help.
Man, I got to get out to your place.
You do.
I
It's
got to
been
get out there. It's
too
been
long.
way too long. Last time I was there, I think me and Corey were there together last time.
2000.
It's when the Sperry training was out there. And was that the last time the Sperry training was out there?
Probably.
When we did the aerial rescues and everything. And
2018. Is that when it was? Like the start of
2018?
2018?
It sounds about right.
Maybe
Yeah.
2017?
But either way, I just got to get out there.
You do.
Yep.
It's changed a little bit.
yeah. But I'm like, before this conversation, like, I was bummed about the idea of going out there and seeing this amazing property. I mean, that property was so beautiful with all the giant trees and generations of work done on that property. And the idea of it getting burnt down is just so sad. And I mean, I can't even imagine how you feel as someone that was there through the process, as you explained.
Yeah.
But coming out of the conversation, I'm hearing about this hope. And that's kind of the metaphor of the fire, right? Is the fire burns, and then there's the rebirth, the phoenix. And that's what I'm getting jazzed on right now. I'm like, man, I want to walk the property and be having this conversation with you.
Oh, man, you should come see our fireweed collection.
Nice.
I've, of course, been, I'm a plant geek at heart, and pre-COVID, loved to travel the Northwest. And so I had this enamored love affair with fireweed. So I've been collecting fireweed seed from Olympic Peninsula and the Gorge and Mount Pisgah and like all over the place.
Connoisseur fireweed collection.
Oregon Coast, I just got all this fireweed, and I had no idea. It was like really strange, kind of ghostly premonition. Like, oh, this is fireweed. This is an important plant. I should bring in these genetics into the space. And I'm telling you, come check it out. It is awesome, so awesome. And we have pretty much done all the removal of the fire trash, which is really cool. So you don't see all the burnt up, kind of psychologically disturbing stuff.
Yeah.
And then, we kind of the biggest silver lining of the whole thing for us is the neighboring property had a multi-million-dollar 10-bedroom mega mansion log home. It had like 100-foot long trees as beams. This thing was nuts.
A giant tinderbox.
Oh, yeah. A giant tinderbox complete with a rock climbing wall and a movie cinema and a wine cellar and all this shit, right? Thing totally evaporated in the fire.
Oh, bad.
Gone, right? And
you didn't have a trail camera on that, did you?
No, I wish. But the neighboring lady is someone who I've done tree work for in the past. we have great rapport. We always used to joke, well, not with her, but with amongst my friends. What if that place next door just burned down one day? And so we say this, of course, very whisper, quiet voice. And of course, here it was a total loss. Everything burned down: the barn, the shop, the stables, the mega cabin, everything. And so now it's raw land, and the landowner is not interested in rebuilding. She got her fat insurance paycheck, and she's gone. She's like, I'm out.
Yeah.
Not dealing with it.
Yeah. And so she's never quite put it on the market, but I approached her. I said, I'm interested. And, I'm going to expand my farm pyre.
Yeah.
And realistically, I want to start a native plant nursery because the property is full sun, water rights, year-round pond. It's like amazing little extension of the homestead that I've been cultivating for 12 years now. And so as of this next weekend, it should be official, we're buying this place.
Hell yeah.
Nice.
Expensive motherfucking raw land, but nevertheless, it's riverfront and it's got all these perks.
Location,
Like-
location.
Yeah, and we didn't have to get in any bidding wars, and the
Yeah.
neighbors was really generous. Let's just leave it at that.
Yeah.
And so there really is this phoenix rising from the ashes. Like there is a whole new generation of ideas and ways in which we're going to do real deal restoration. Because I really like the people to people stuff. That was always a really interesting component to doing tree work. Was at some point you got to talk to the homeowner.
Yeah.
Or
Yep.
like somebody
Yeah.
who's like actually questioning you about these trees because you're apparently the expert. So you got to talk to people, from your expertise about the tree that you're working on. So now here we are. We're gonna go into a whole new iteration of what the space can do. And we secured some funding too, some grant funding. And so it's like a whole bunch of stuff coming into the works. And I'd love for you to see it.
Yep. No,
Yeah.
I'm gonna put it on the calendar.
Yeah.
When we hit the record button and stop this, we'll figure out a weekend because I gotta make. I'm the worst at being like, oh, dude, I gotta see it, but I take too much on. I'm like, I want to do this, I want to do that.
Yeah.
He's got shiny objects.
So I need to get it on the calendar. So before we go, let's. Do you have your calendar on your phone?
Yeah, we could do it.
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
Yeah, and you have to come out and check out the zip line and the rope swing and
Yeah.
there's
No.
a couple other things.
It's all part of it.
Yeah, we're gonna do some tree nets. I should get my buddy Andrew to come and talk. Another Andrew,
Yeah.
another Ginger. This guy's great.
Awesome.
He's my buddy, but I've met him only once. He runs a company called Be In Tree Nets. Check it out. It is amazing. He's doing, arborist cordage and then a lot of paracord and does these weaves. Pulls the rope really tight, but in this kind of mycelium web type fashion. It's like very organic, and it gets taut like a trampoline. And he's doing them in trees.
Like way up in a tree.
Interesting.
Yeah, he needs a couple trees.
Oh yeah, no, we need to.
Yeah.
I want to have him on. I want to talk. So one of the things I like to talk to is people that are tree related but not directly arborists.
Yeah.
Because like I don't want to be in a sounding chamber too much with arborists but that's a perfect someone that knows trees and has just got his own little kick. So
Yeah, I'll connect you guys. We got a lot to talk about.
perfect.
Just come
Yeah.
out.
No, we got a lot to talk about. But I'm gonna get back into the holiday farm fire real quick
Yeah.
a little bit because one thing that I'm looking at the notes, and one thing I want to kind of touch on is getting back to when it was going down. We're still in the apocalyptic space. Ash is still raining from the sky. Because, we had ash for weeks falling from the sky. It was a trip. And I remember getting home from work, long day at work, and being like, all right, I had to go pick something up from the store. Had to go to Target to grab, some more shampoo or just something, stupid. and going there and walking around. And I was at Target and I was like, oh, I'm going to stoke the kids out. I'm going to buy them a little toy or something to bring home to them. And walking through the toy section and hearing these people talking, and they had been evacuated from their homes. And it was like a whole family that was like, get a toothbrush. I don't have a toothbrush. I need a pair of shoes. And like having this realization of the impact on the people that live up the river. Like I'm sitting there looking to get some shampoo and a toy, and they're looking at like, I don't have a toothbrush. I don't have shoes, and, but I wanted to recognize that side of it, that there's this huge impact on the community. There's a lot of people were like your neighbor who just moved, like their house burnt down. They collect the insurance and moved on. Mm-hmm. And then there's a lot of people, when we were doing the tree inspections, where, they were living in trailers, and getting ready, tearing down their old houses. And, but, I just wanted to take a minute and speak to that as well, because there was a lot of hardship had in the Holiday Farm fire, and there was a lot of overcoming.
Yeah. I was so going through and doing a lot of this that hazard identification work there, like just the resiliency of some of these people. Like I don't know if I could have been that strong. Like hearing some of their stories, like we did a hazard identification in an old mobile home park, and there were probably 50 homes in there, all gone. There wasn't a single mobile house left over, and these people's entire lives just up in smoke.
That was downtown Blue River, right?
Yeah,
I mean, that whole city, town, was wiped off the map.
Wiped out, yeah, just completely gone. But these people, like they saw the fire coming down the ridge. They woke up in the middle of the night and they saw this fire coming down the ridge. They didn't have time to think. They didn't have time to do anything. Like they got in their car, or the manager of the property, who's the one I was talking to, they got in their truck. They started pulling out. A tree came down and hit their truck. They had to get out of their truck and get into another vehicle, their RV, and then take that out, and like barely got out. And just like they were still so full of hope. Like they were just so resilient in the face of this catastrophic, world-ending, life-upending thing, and they were still like just chugging along.
Yeah,
it was impressive.
Yeah, it's unimaginable in a lot of ways to lose everything up in smoke. And like you say, talking to people that were in Blue River, it would be literally people pounding on their door, because I think it hit Blue River like at 11:30. Mm-hmm. And, so it's the middle of the night, and it's people pounding on the door and like, we gotta go now.
Yep.
Like they see the fire on the hill next to their house, and they're just, jumping in the car and racing out with fire behind them. I mean, it like talk about apocalyptic. I'm talking about like getting in my truck and seeing some ash swirling in the passenger seat and being like, this is apocalyptic, like they were like, watching their house burn behind them while they were running away damn near,
Yeah.
It was such a hardcore time for the whole area. And it goes to, the kind of the refugees of these climate situations. Right now there's going to be a huge, I know with Katrina, there was to this day, a huge influence of people that came into Houston, and, a lot of those towns that were near, the big cities that were closest to New Orleans and Louisiana, and they just would, ship these refugees there. And now there's these huge communities made up of people that were refugees from there, still there. And it didn't wipe New Orleans off the map.
And Katrina happened in 2004.
Yeah. And Ida just hit. The same thing's going to happen again, and so that's the real price paid when there's these giant climate events, are these refugees, these people that had lives set up and just get upended, and so it's it's one of those things with, right now, and I said I want to get back to the holiday farm fire, and went about as far away within the continental United States as I could, going down to the southeast. But, there's a lot of people that are right now in a similar situation, and there's a lot of tree companies. I see it on like Facebook groups and stuff online, people saying like, hey, I'm heading to New Orleans, who needs help? Tree people. And that's awesome, because there's a need and you're going for that need. But also understand you're going there under very different circumstances. You're not going there, this is not somebody that can afford tree work. This is somebody that is hoping for an insurance payout, and so I can't, I'm not there, so I don't know. I don't want to talk like I do know, but it just seems like a total different atmosphere, and a total different situation, so, yeah, as tree people, go down there and do good, help, because, that this is an opportunity to help other people and create that good karma. Even though there's not good or bad karma, create karma in a good direction.
There's enough karma in a bad direction in this world.
Yeah,
Be the change.
exactly. Well, I think it's probably good time to wrap it up here pretty soon. Anybody have any last quick thoughts or stories or anything?
I didn't go. So after we did the crane job, I didn't go into work for, I think, the rest of that week, because I was dealing with personal stuff, and then we also still thought that the fire was going to hit our place, and we had some people lighting some fires around. They had lit fires all on the hills between Brownsville and Lebanon, and I don't know why. I think they were just a fire bat. This was,
Yeah, that was a crazy thing, man. There was the one next to your house where you guys caught someone lighting a fire.
Well, yeah, a bunch of them.
And then over in Fall Creek, Eric caught people lighting fires. So it was like all these firebugs were coming out and trying to light fires because, I don't know, yeah.
Yeah, and it was definitely just, they saw the fire, they saw the devastation, they saw how it ripped through, and they were just like, oh, well, I can just do this to these people just by setting a little brush fire right here. So it was one of those things. Fortunately, nothing. The ones in my area didn't amount to much because the fire department showed up instantly, because of course the fire department is going to be, keyed into that kind of stuff because they're good at their jobs. And so anyway, I was doing that, and I just remember I was home for most of that time, and I just remember, so I live on a hill, and I can like oversee a good portion of the valley, and there's this one Doug fir that's kind of like one of my reference points, and I remember not being able to see that Doug fir, and it's probably 100 yards away from my window, and I couldn't see that. And I just remember like seeing the smoke gradually like clear away from that just over like the period of 2 or 3 days, and how that was the sign that's, things were starting to come back to normal.
Well, and I think that's a good point to start wrapping it up. I think, Corey, what's your final thoughts?
Quit fucking around with nature. Like, nature does what nature's going to do. We think we know best, and, sometimes we have good intentions, but there are processes that we can't possibly understand, and the more we meddle with them and the more we try to enforce our will on the world around us, the more it seems to bite us. And it's hippy dippy, but nature has a way. Just let nature do its thing.
What are your final thoughts?
Yeah, final thoughts. Well, let's say first and foremost, much gratitude for being invited to come out tonight.
We'll have to do it again.
Absolutely.
I know we got way more stories than just fire recovery stuff. So
yeah, that's tip of the proverbial iceberg there. But yeah, lots of gratitude for even having a place to, sleep at night. Kind of like what you said, basic preparations and kind of basic understanding of basic understanding. No, this is like, I'm not a forest ecologist, right? Mm-hmm. But basic understanding of kind of the land systems and the way that it works, the way it's worked in millennia past, and the way we've been managing it recently, and kind of where we go from here. I mean, those kind of things really saved my butt, both physically and emotionally, and I think on a mental level, I had just enough preparations in place. So that's a good final thought too. Is just grateful to be prepared, to be more prepared ever since that. Because it's not a fire, it's a flood, right? So I'm thinking about what is next, and I'm feeling very happy to have been so related with trees too, because I think on one hand, it's the trees that kind of brought us here tonight to talk, and they're definitely one of the features of our landscape that we just wouldn't be the same without. And so when you talk about nature being as nature is, well, the trees are a pillar, keystone, if you will. And so
Yeah.
I feel very blessed to have developed such a relationship with them. That's, like kind of what you said, still beginning.
Yeah.
And we'll see where it goes in the next couple decades.
Yeah. My final thoughts, one, it's kind of hard to believe it's already been a year, and it feels like the work is just getting underway up the river. There's homes that are up now, but there's still a lot of construction going. You got all the crews setting the power lines, and when you get the fire, it's kind of the forest hitting the reset button. I was thinking about like the fireweed. You're talking about, how it needs that fireweed. Kind of what your thoughts were, Corey. Just let it be. Let Mother Nature do its thing. That's not going to happen. There's too much money to be made. But let Mother Nature do its thing. And there's also something to be said about thinking about the refugees, and we didn't really get a lot into it. There's always more you can talk about, but there's a lot of community support for people locally that were having a hard time. And, you were kind of talking about how you're working with your neighbors more and, meeting neighbors and, finding that silver lining. So, yeah, I think with that, I'll say stay safe and, find that silver lining. Be the phoenix.